Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Sheldon. Mr. Nagash, thank you for being here. Let's kind of get the cards on the table here, just from having listened to the questions on. In light of the scope of this hearing, the full range of permissible gynecological and obstetric care services kind of boils down to abortions or contraception. Would that be a fair statement?
There's a range, but in the discussion here, it appears that that's what the questioning is on.
All right. I mean,
These funding announcements, we looked at the totality and determined that all 4 applicants had the competence to administer the grant. Ultimately, it came down to exercising the preference.
and so you couldn't imagine any scenario in which the Catholic bishops or any other group who refused to refer these 3 type of services would be awarded this grant.
That's not accurate, respectfully. It would have been because a lot of the subgrantees of the current grantees have the same religious faith, the same religious belief, but they have basically, those organizations have worked with those individuals so that they would not have to violate their Catholic teaching.
It seems to me there are 2 separate Federal laws, the Weldon Amendment and the Coates-Snow Amendment, that specifically prohibit HHS from discriminating against health care providers that do not perform or refer to abortion. Why do you think those aren't applicable here?
I checked with General Counsel on this, but let me point out that, as I indicated, that subgrantees are faith-based organizations who share the religious belief of the Catholic bishops, are still providing services under this contract. But victims who require the additional services outlined are not served by that individual subgrantee.
All right. So I'm not sure that answered my question, but just because I've already used up more than half of my time, I do want to follow up with a couple of questions with respect to what you just said about the victim's desire or need for these services. Have any of your organizations ever conducted an evaluation of human trafficking victims to ask them how important they consider to be these services to be?
Yes, there is research in that arena that we will be happy to provide the committee.
I would like to see this because, again, I think we run into a situation where, as again Mr. Gowdy pointed out, of the 2,271 victims that the USCCB helped, almost 988 were men and 1,283 were females. Does this sound correct to you?
I'm not sure I can speak to personal knowledge.
I don't have the figure with me, but we can get back to you with that.
All right. So, but there were a good percentage of them were men. That would be a fair statement? I mean,
again, you know, I have
so
to get that information.
Guys don't require OBGYN services, right?
That's correct.
And so USCCB could continue to service men and without any problem with related to this. Would that be correct?
That's correct.
And what about the females who were currently in the process with USCCB? What happens to these women?
As I indicated earlier, the USCCB has been very cooperative to assure that victims that are currently being served continue to be served, and I would have to compliment them on the smoothness by which we've made this transition.
And finally, again, I think Mr. Gowdy pointed out, and I'd like to reiterate again, not all victims of human trafficking are involved in the sex trade. There's slavery for labor and and other purposes.
Yes, I think the numbers who were actually served under the contract who were victims of sex trafficking was approximately 19%. The broader numbers that we've seen indicate a much higher percentage of
So
not only sex trafficking, but a combination of sex and labor trafficking.
Now, I just remain troubled that the U.S. Catholic bishops were discriminated here for their for their faith-based belief and unwillingness to provide abortions. And I just want to be on the record that and I think many members of this panel are troubled by that. Whether it actually violates the letter of the laws I referred to earlier, I think it clearly violates the spirit of those laws, and I'm extremely disappointed at the way this is handled. I'll yield back.
Would the gentleman yield?